Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about Splatoon 2 for the Nintendo Switch. Now, this is going to be a little interesting because I actually did not play the first Splatoon, so I'm going to probably be explaining a lot of stuff that people who've already played Splatoon already know. And I've really only played this. I don't have the big Octo expansion. I haven't played it locally. I think that might be all the things I have to really qualify for this. So, and when I played, I've never played it, I've really only played with the Pro Controller without the gyro controls. So if you're looking for thoughts on those things specifically, I can't help you. But if you just want to talk about the game more so, then stick around because we're going to do that. And also, I'll have probably a lot more details in the written review, and I'll put that in the description. So that's probably going to be the place you want to go for more details. And this is going to be for if you want to hear it, because reading is hard. And whatever. So that's good. Let's start. So Splatoon 2 is a third-person shooter with a bit of a twist. I think there is some kind of a plot going on for the single-player story campaign thing, but it's not real important. It's more of a plot or premise type of thing. There is some lore you could probably get into, but as far as just enjoying the game, you don't need to know about it. And if there's any better evidence for that, let's just say I don't fucking know what it is off the top of my head. It's just that you're playing as a creature called an Inkling, which are basically like these people that can turn into squids, and you're fighting against Octolings, which are, things that are like people, but can turn into octopi and other assorted baddies. In the single player, for like most of these stages, what you're doing is like the early stages are more about like learning the basics of the game and how to play. So things like you can move around and look around, you can jump, you can shoot. But what you're shooting is ink. You're shooting out of like this ink tank. So you're shooting this colored ink around. You can also throw these these secondary weapons. Usually, like especially in these here, like usually it's something like a grenade or some other maybe tactical item. But early on, it's usually going to be something like a grenade. And using these sub weapons use up a pretty sizable chunk of your ink tank, but you can refill the ink over time. Once the ink is down in places, you can actually hit a button to turn into a squid and swim through it really swiftly, which is faster than you move. Normally, you can also do stuff like swim up walls with it. You put it on walls to get up to higher elevations. There are some other like obstacles and things that like kind of are triggered by using the ink, and you can usually manipulate those by going into squid form and whatnot as well. When you're in the ink, you'll actually refill your ink pack, your ink tank faster when you're in there, as well as like recover damage. Because when you take damage, or recover health, because when you take damage, you'll see kind of like effects on the outside of the screen. You take too much, then you'll die. But if you swim around in there, it's easier to get that back. And I believe you pretty much always start out with some armor in the story stuff in the single player campaign. And so you're taught things like how to swim around there, and like the idea is like throwing grenades to like distract enemies or with shields and stuff, and swim behind them, or sneak up on them with this, or how you can arc your ink over and hit enemies with the ink. And there's also a lot of different weapons. Like usually each level it forces you to use a certain weapon, so a lot of the levels are just showing you how to use these different weapons and what they're good at doing. Which most of them have strengths and weaknesses. There are things that are like guns. There's a few different kinds of like guns, and the ways that these certain gun types work, how far they shoot, how fast they shoot, the damage they do, the quirks of using them. There's stuff like rollers that you can run around with that are like more close range, and paintbrushes that can leave trails behind them when you use them. or can be swung around to throw larger sums of paint in short ranges, that kind of thing. So there's some like interesting weapons thrown out there. And as you go, you also, in the stages, you can find stuff like there are these scrolls you can find that unlock little pieces of extra art and some of the lore of the game. There are also these chunks you can get because when you defeat enemies, you'll get these little like power eggs, which we use as like some currency for upgrading stuff. But these chunks are also going to be needed for upgrading the guns and the weapon, like other pieces of gear you have for the single player stuff. So you have to have so many of these things, and usually those are hidden throughout the levels, in kind of places that are a little more hidden or off the beaten path, hard to reach places. And once you beat a level, you unlock the next level. There's a boss in each section, so you have to beat the bosses. If you can come back later, and as you get more weapons, you can come back and replay the level with any weapon. Some levels have to be tweaked to work for all other weapons, so they have little slight alterations, but you can go back and play those, and it'll record your best time and what you got the best time with, which weapon you were using. If you beat a level with all of the weapons, you'll get these tickets that you can use in the food court, in the main hub of the game, the main menu hub area. And if you beat every level of the game with a weapon, it unlocks the ability to actually purchase it in the shop to use for the online play. So those are the things you can get for doing those. And eventually you beat all the levels, beat all the bosses. There's a big final boss to go through. So there's all that. And that's mostly the single player, without giving you spoilers on like what you're doing for a lot of stages and what the bits and pieces of the story would be. You know, the plot and how that goes. That's the main single-player story stuff, and that's essentially how you learn to play, and then you get into doing stuff in multiplayer, and there's a few different multiplayer modes, and you do need a Nintendo Switch Online account to play online. I don't know if you can I think you can probably play locally without it, but I haven't really tried it. I haven't had anyone to play with, so I haven't really tried to do anything with that. But if playing online, you're going to need Nintendo Switch Online. And when you do that, one of the differences is that you can actually, your loadout is now determined by things you kind of pick. So you can buy these different guns in the weapon shop, and as you level up, you'll get access to more and more guns. And every gun, it comes with a set of, like, here's a gun with its stats and whatever, or weapon or whatever it does. The weapon, the sub-weapon, and your special are all tied to that, which you can get some specials in the single player as well, but they're in fixed locations. And here, for specials, well, we'll get to that. So anyways, it has those. You can also do things like there's hats, shirts, and shoes. You can customize what you're wearing there. Each of those have different little stats on them that can buff different abilities you have. And just buff certain like stats on your character. When you go in, the main mode of play in multiplayer is Turf War. If you just do the normal standard online play, that's the mode you're playing. And in Turf War, you go around shooting ink around the place, and you can kill other enemies. You work with a team. There are 4-on-4 battles, and there's then, like, I believe it's 3 minutes are the match lengths. At the end of the match, whichever team has the most turf inked wins. And so that's the main idea, is to ink as much territory as you can. And you'll get bonuses for winning. You'll get like experience, and you can get cash. Use cash to buy more weapons and gear and whatnot. The experience helps you level up, which unlocks more of the weapons for you to have access to, and helps a bit with like pairing up with people who are probably more around your level to kind of keep it somewhat balanced. Once you play enough of that, you can do ranked play, and there's a few different modes for ranked play. It's still 4-on-4 battles, but in here, there's these different modes. There's no turf war. The modes are splat zones, which is where you try to keep all of the, basically, there's certain designated areas, and you're trying to cover and keep those areas for as long as possible. You have to keep it for a certain amount of time, and if the time in the match runs out before anybody hits that goal, then whoever held it for the longest wins. there are ones where what are the other ones? I'm trying to think of all of them off the top of my head. There's tower control, which is where there's a tower on this track that goes along the middle. It's one tower on this one track that can go back and forth depending on who's on the tower. So while you're on the tower starts moving in your direction and it goes in towards the enemy's goal post or whatever. And it is to kind of fend them off and fight them off and try to get it all the way back. There are certain checkpoints along the way, and once you set a checkpoint long enough, that checkpoint breaks. So even if like they push it back on you, if you start pushing again, you won't have to stop at that spot anymore because that checkpoint is broken. So whoever gets to the other team's goal first wins, or whoever got the furthest at any point during the match. If the time runs out, whoever got the furthest at any point during the match wins. Oh shit! There's one other. Oh, Rainmaker, is one where it's another one where it's like there's a weapon, the Rainmaker, which shoots these like very deadly explosives, but very slowly. And the idea is both teams are kind of fighting over control of the Rainmaker. You have to like shoot it a bit and like make it accessible for you to go grab it, then try to bring it up to this pedestal near the other team's spawn. And so whoever gets it to the drop zone first wins. If time runs out, whoever got it closest at any point during the match wins. And then the last one is a little more complicated, but it's called Clam Blitz. It was added later. Essentially, you start out, and each side has like these like clam baskets. You're picking up these clams that are laying all over the level. Once you get enough clams, it turns into a power clam. And then whoever has the power clam is like marked on the map, and then you have to go to the goal and throw the power clam at their clam basket to break the barrier on it. And if you do that, then your clam basket gets an impenetrable barrier put over it for the duration of this time, because temporarily, with their barrier down, you're able to you get a few points for doing that, and then everyone on your team can go over and throw clams into the basket and try to score points. So you're trying to score the set amount of points in time. And then afterwards, once that timer is up, the barrier goes back up, your impenetrable barrier goes down, and they're given a power clam that just spawns right outside of their area, and you can, killing each other, like you can pick up defeated people's clams, but the power clams are team specific. And so it's just whoever gets to the point amount at first, they win, unless they run out of time, and then whoever had the highest score wins. And in ranked modes, as you win, your rank goes up. As you lose, it goes down. If you win, you can get boosted, cash and experience. You also get experience on your weapons for doing any of these modes, too. So, like, the online play. So some weapons have, like, these other abilities that can be unlocked, but you need to play enough using those different things, the gear or whatever, with those little question mark icons on them. So there's that also. But the other thing is that, like, if you lose more, then of course, like, you don't really get much for rewards in ranked play, is the thing. And then once you play enough of ranked, you can play league play, which is essentially the same thing, but you're teaming up with a group in pairs or groups of 4, and you're going off and playing online with other people that way, and getting a power based on how you perform in those games. Also in the food court, you can go in and use your tickets. You can buy these drinks to upgrade, like, to get a boosted chance of getting gear that drops with certain stats on it. And then you can also use the food tickets to eat meals, and most of those, I think, are just things like boosting your experience or your cash gain for your matches. And they go for, whatever X amount of matches. The other mode, the one other one, is Salmon Run. And in here, there's 4 people playing, but you're all on the same team against AI opponents. You're put into the middle of this arena, and a bunch of these little, like, sea creatures come out called salmonoids. And so you're trying to fight them off, and every once in a while larger ones will come out, and they'll be boss salmonoids, and there's a number of different ones of those, and you have to use lots of different tactics in order to fight them. They all do different things, when you defeat a boss salmonoid, it drops golden eggs, because when you defeat the other ones, they drop power eggs, which is also something that is kept track of during the match. But the goal is to grab enough of those golden eggs, bringing them back to the basket and putting them in there, because you have to hit a certain quota by the end of the wave. And there are always 3 waves, so you want to hit that, whatever it happens to be for each wave, you have to hit that quota at least. And you get bonuses for having more power eggs from defeating enemies, and for, going over the quota. You'll get bonus rewards at the end. You get payouts based on things like that in your rank. So you can get, mostly you're getting P, also, which is like just these points that is like calculated for each of these, because the event rolls in and out, so every time it rolls in or whatever, and it's different, like there's different sets of rewards to get. A lot of them are randomized loot, and some of them are fixed pieces of loot that you'll get for that run. So as you go, you keep doing that and accumulating those items, and then you can go pick them up later at a little place outside that section. And the thing about Salmon Run, though, is that typically there are 4 weapons shown there. Except for like really special occasions when it's totally randomized, usually there are 4 set weapons out there. So you go out there and you're given one of those weapons to start with, and between each round, the weapons change hands. So you never know what you're going to get necessarily, you just know what the possibilities are for those weapons. And you also get a randomized special ability, and you get 2 of them that you can use whenever, but you only get 2 max for the entirety of all 3 waves, which is unlike the normal multiplayer online stuff, which when you do that, you actually it's based on like whatever it is. Once you ink enough turf, your gauge fills up, and you'll be able to use it once it's full. But if you die, then it goes down again. So here, you just have it, and you can use it. You have 2 of them to use whenever. And I think that's actually all of the explaining for stuff. But, so it's a lot. It's a lot to take in of the variations on the modes and explaining gameplay. But it's really fun. Like, I think there's a lot of interestingly addictive stuff here. I really like that turf war. I mean, it's an interesting take on a third-person shooter to not be all about killing people all the time, and to be a little more interesting. And how inking stuff, it makes like a dynamic. Like, you're slower in enemy ink, and that's bad. But like, it's not just like straight up shooting people. Like, turf war is a cool way to make it feel like you're always doing something, because even if you suck at killing people, like I do. If you're going around and trying to ink the area really well and being focused on that, like, you can even get weapons and get abilities and stuff that are more geared towards helping your teammates, or towards like covering more area. That can be super helpful. You don't have to keep beating the highest kill death ratio in order to help really win the match. And it's got a lot of interesting variety of weapons for doing that. The single player has got some really interesting stuff, and like I also really like the way the single player builds up into playing multiplayer. Of like, after you play single player, you understand like the basics and the techniques, and you understand most of the weapons you already understand how to use, or you can figure out because it's pretty similar to something you've already used. And it's a decent length campaign for that. I really, really like Salmon Run. Especially when I had like the one time I played and it had the all randomized shit, where it's like you didn't know what you're going to get for any of the waves ever, because it was always completely random. That was awesome. But in general, I really like that because you're working together to beat the AI, and like it's kind of putting you into like using weapons you wouldn't normally use. So I think it's a really fun thing to play around with that. And there's just like really like a ton of polish on this. Like there's a lot of style, and I appreciate that the colors they pick, because I am somewhat colorblind, I didn't really have any problems. Like maybe a couple of times, maybe, of like the different colors they picked were kind of hard to tell apart. But for the most part, they did a really good job picking color combinations for the ink, which I think was really big for me. And yeah, the game is it's very colorful, and it's got like basically like that '90s kids game show like aesthetic, and it's got like the interesting music, and Marina is hot. And then like I don't know. There's a lot of cool things about this game that like I've ended up enjoying quite a bit. Um, of course, there are the downsides to the game. One of the biggest ones being that like you kind of need Nintendo Switch Online to really enjoy it. Single player is okay, but especially if you're getting all the stuff in it, like trying to play through all the levels multiple times so you can beat it with all the weapons, you're going to get a lot of meal tickets. You're going to get a lot of weapons unlocked for things that are only going to be good for online play as a reward. So you're kind of rewarded with an advertisement for Nintendo Switch Online, and that's kind of frustrating. And I don't know that you'd want to necessarily get be getting the game without Nintendo Switch Online because of that. It's just kind of a bit of a slap in the face there. I also think that like the I don't know, ranked play can be a little punishing just because if you lose, you feels like you don't make any progress because you don't get stuff. Like you don't get as much of a you don't really get like experience or cash or anything from doing that a lot of the time, and it just feels like a lot of wasted time if you're not good enough at it. Which I guess is probably why it's the reason it's ranked, I suppose. But still, I didn't like that too much because I'm not a super competitive player either. So there's also that. I also think it's annoying that the big Octo expansion shit is in the main menu, and it's just an area you can kind of go to. And whenever you go near it, it's like, hey, you want to go here? Buy the DLC. Like, maybe just don't have that in there if I don't have that. Maybe do that instead. I think that would probably make more sense and make me less pissed off if they did that instead of just constantly leaving an advertisement in the fucking menu and in the main game hub when you do that. Like, I don't know, that's kind of frustrating. I also think it's kind of annoying the way you have to try and get, like, gear. Like, there's a system of, like, getting this gear and, like, sacrificing gear to get, like, chunks of stuff to then put onto your other, like, to use to potentially make specific upgrades on gear later. So, like, you have to get the gear, enough chunks of, like, the stuff you want for customizing your gear, and then use it on the piece of gear that you like the look of the most. So it just takes a really, really long time to get something that you both like the look of and the stats on based on like what you're trying to do. And that's just really frustrating. And it feels like it's just a huge time suck. And it's just, I've been playing how many hours, and I'm not a very high level at all. So I feel like the game is pretty grindy and is maybe a bit long in the tooth if you're looking to actually get a lot of the stuff in the game. Overall, though, God, that's tiny. Switch things are so small. If I hold it on this side, it'll be easier to see. Splatoon 2 is a game that I've enjoyed much more than I thought it would, and largely it's because I was playing it, online with a friend. That's kind of the reason I got it, was to play with them. And I spent more than I probably should have. Plus, I got Switch Online to do it, but I had a lot of fun with it. And like, I guess what I would say for recommendation's sake is, if you have Nintendo Switch Online and someone to play with, you'll probably like this game. It's probably worth playing. But if you know you're not going to get Nintendo Switch Online, or if you don't have someone to play with, it's maybe not something you want to get until you can find it at like a price cut. Because it's fun, but I don't know if it's that amazing to do that. And even though there's a lot of stuff in here that's not necessarily my taste or my cup of tea for some of this stuff, I still had a lot of fun with it anyways. And it really wasn't until I played ARMS that I really appreciated how much I actually do like this. I'll probably review that someday, but I just had started playing that, and it was not as immediately fun and engaging for a new IP on the Switch as this was. So, I guess this wasn't a new IP on the Switch, but it was fairly new. Whatever, you get what I'm saying. This game's all right, and I just wonder, is it worth going back and playing the first Splatoon? That would be, leave that in the comments. Which one did you like better, and do you still play the first one? Do you play this one? Leave me stuff in the comments. I'd ask about the ladies, but I mean, anyone who's gonna disagree with me about Marina being hotter is just insane. So, you know, if you ever wanted to see something that was simultaneously, a tentacle porn, and solo masturbation video, like, Marina is it in one package. So, Bye.